What's up, guys? Joe Rock here for another tutorial. And where we left off was right here. Pretty exciting stuff. So, what we implemented last time was a dialog fragment that when you click the button, it comes up from the bottom and it will leave from the right. All right. And when we did that, we need to make the dialog fragment class and we subclassed it, the dialog fragment class, we subclassed it, and we made an animation, and that's where we left off. So now what we're going to do is what we want to happen is when the user enters in their first name, their email, their password because they're signing up, and they click the sign up button, that the animation will go to the right and the dialog will close. And at that point, we would want to do some uh, ideally you go into the server and you would check to make sure that the first name, the email, those things aren't already there, and then send a response back to the client, the application that will tell you, okay, everything's good to go. Sign them up and let them into the application. All right. So we're not going to do any kind of server work right now. Well, I'll implement something to emulate it, but as of right now, we're not going to get into that. I'm not sure if you guys are doing the backend with PHP, if you're not looking to do any backend right now, or if you're using Microsoft Azure, or what's going on. If you guys do want me to show you how to do some stuff like that, I can just throw them in the comments below, and I can whip something up in the later tutorials to show you how to make a web request. But for right now, we're just going to work on the client side. Okay, so we're going to work on emulating something that will take the user input, doing some kind of work, some threading, and then return the output and let the user into the activity. Okay, so that's what we're going to do in this tutorial. Let's dive in. Let's go ahead and close that out. Stop running. Okay, so what we first want to do is we want to start registering the stuff in the dialog sign up design file. Okay, and like the edit text, all these edit text, the button, all that stuff, we need to be able to reference that stuff inside of the code. Okay, so now we need to go and look at the IDs. First name, this one's txt first name, this one's txt first name. That's not right, right? Okay, so we need to change that. Oh wait, oh, duh. Okay, sorry, that's layout below. That's why I always need to put the IDs first. TXT email, and this one's TXT probably password. Yeah, and then the button is going to be button dialog email. Okay, so we need to get those referenced inside of the code over here. Okay, so the view is now inflated, and from that view is where we can get these data types, these objects. Okay, so let's make some global variables, and we'll make an edit text. Okay, and with the edit text, I like to call it the same thing as the ID, or somewhat close to it. So just a convention I like to use. And because these are global variables, let me prefix it with the M. We'll make another edit text for the email, and we'll make another edit text for the password. And last, we'll make a button that will be referencing the email. So sign up, button sign up. That's good enough. All right. So now that we have these, we need to instantiate them through the view. All right. And then we want to do it off the view. So view dot find view by ID. Okay. Let it know it's an edit text through the generic, and txt first name. IntelliSense crapped on me right there. We'll do email next. View dot find view by ID. Edit text. So once you guys get used to this, For those of you that are familiar with Android, this is no sweat. For those of you that are not, I'm sure you're catching on by now. Email. And last edit text is gonna be find view by ID. Grab the ID of it. Okay. And last is gonna be the button. Dot find view by ID. So button type. And button dialog email. All right, so now we have all of that. So now we can be able, now we're going to be able to, you know, grab the text, whatever the user puts in, to the property, to the text property, and we can do some other stuff, but that's mainly what we want the edit text for. And the button sign up, we're going to want to register that click event with something. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is let's register the click event, which, if you remember, it's dot click plus equals tab tab. And Visual Studio will generate a method for you, or you can use the anonymous method way. Okay, but let's just do it here for now. So in this event will be called when the user clicks on the button. User has clicked the sign up button. All right, and now what we need to do is, this is where it's going to get a little tricky, but bear with me. What we're going to do is we're going to make some custom event arguments, okay? So notice how this event argument right here is an event argument type, and it's e dot, and there's not really much in it, all right? So what we're going to do is, what we do is we subclass the event arguments, and we make our own custom arguments. And we tie that to an event that when the event is called, which is right here, we're gonna fire and broadcast that event, which we'll subscribe to in the main activity. And if that sounded like an earful, just pretty much watch, and it's probably easier watching than it is me rambling on. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so the first thing you want to do, and this is some things that I'm going to point out. Some things are really similar with C# and Java and in C++, and most of you, if you hopefully have some programming experience, of course, and you'll be able to follow along pretty easily. But some things that are specific to C# or .NET, I'm going to try to do my best to point out, because it's obviously a little different from Java and C++ and those languages that you may be coming from, or maybe you're already familiar with C# entirely and you're not familiar with Xamarin, which in that case you're probably going to, you already know exactly what I'm talking about with when I talk about delegates and events and all that good stuff. So but if not, I'm going to try to point this out, and I'll try to be as thorough as possible. Okay, so let's make another class, and we're going to call it, we will call it on sign up event args. Okay, and we will inherit from the event args class. All right, sounds good. And then in this class, we're going to want some properties. All right, so let's do that. Let's make a string that's going to hold the first name. So first name. Then we'll make a string that's going to hold the email address. Then we'll make a string that's going to hold the password. All right, and that's pretty much all the info that we'll need from the user, because that's all we're asking for. So, and then finally, let's make some properties. And properties are basically like getters and setters in Java, if you're familiar with that, or even C++. When you make a method that all it does is return a private variable or set or a private variable, and that's basically what properties. That's exactly what properties are. Just with a little bit of a flair to it. So don't let them trick you. That's all they are. So we'll call this first name, and this is the syntax for a property. It has a getter. It doesn't need a setter or a getter. If it just has a get, then it's read only. If it only has a set, then it's write only. So basically the same thing. So if we're gonna do a get and a set, so when you want to get it, and none of these these methods, what I kind of got confused about with C Sharp is I thought maybe when I first started programming with C Sharp is, do you have to call get explicitly? Do you have to call set explicitly? And what's that all about? And what the heck? How does it know? And so those are some of the questions that I had that you may have. And basically, no, you don't have to call it explicitly. Basically, you can use first name, the property, just like a variable, and .NET will take care of the rest for you. So you don't have to call get first name or set first name. You don't even call, you basically use first name. And then it knows to use this or whatever you return. So we want to return the actual variable, our private variable. And the same thing with this, we want to set, and we want to set the variable to value. And value is a keyword in it, and .NET is smart enough to know that when you say value, and I'm not smart enough to put a semicolon, when you put value, that it knows that you mean the value that whatever you initialized first name to. Okay, so it does all of that for you. And that's the beauty of properties, and one of the many beauties of properties. And there's not much to it, but that's just something you might have to get used to. And string, and it's always going to want to be the same data type, of course, of whatever you're getting or setting. And email, get, same thing, return email, and oops, I want to set the email to value. Okay, so I'm typing all this out in hopes that you're following along with me and you're typing these things out as well and getting more used to setting properties and doing all that. All right, get, and we want to return password, and set, we want to set password. Okay, so now we have all our variables, and since these are private, we're not going to be able to use these outside. We're going to use outside of this class, we're going to have to use the first name, email, password properties. Okay, so that's what we want to do, and then it'll take care of all of that for us. The next thing we want to do in our custom on sign up event argument class is we want to make our constructor, right? And our constructor is going to take all of the values right here that it needs. So it's going to take 3 strings, first name, email, and password. Okay, and it's basically just going to set all that stuff. And because it's inside this class, we can use the variables, our private variables, because they're private to this class, and the constructor can use it, of course. Or we can actually use our properties, which comes up in Visual Studio as a little wrench. Okay, so that's how you know it's a property. And you could use either one, but let's use the properties. Okay, so when this is used, it'll take first name. It'll say, okay, it's initializing, so I need to use a set, and value becomes the value of first name, this first name, okay? Whatever it is in context. Simple enough. Email will be initialized to email, and password. Okay, so now we got all our variables initialized, and that is good to go. All right, so this is our custom event arg class, and then the last thing we want to do is call our base method. Okay, and that's just calling the base method of our parent class, which is event arg. And for Java, it's super. You would do, super class is the same thing as base class, and you can do it outside of the constructor, almost like you're inheriting it, but you can use call base, and that's just something that's just syntax wise, and that's what C# lets you do. Really convenient. Just kind of throw it out there in the outskirts and let it do its thing. Okay, so we are done with that. Now we want to come back over here. All right, so now we come back to the sign up when the user has clicked the sign up button. All right, and when we do that, we want to broadcast our event that's going to have these event args. And the way we make an event is this way. So the keyword event handler, right? And inside of the generic, we want to specify that, hey, this event is going to take our event, the one that we just made. If you don't specify that, then it's just going to take it the normal event args, which we've already subclassed from. Okay, so on sign up event args is what this event is going to take, and then the name of the event. So we can do something like m on sign up complete. All right, and there we have it. So there's our event that will broadcast to any subscribers, which we haven't yet done. We haven't yet subscribed to this event yet, but we will do that soon. I'll show you. Okay, so here's where we actually want to broadcast and say, hey, I'm firing off this event with these arguments, and the event will always take the sender and the arguments, which are currently these right now that we have specified. Okay, and there's two ways that you can fire or broadcast an event. Then the one way is just using the invoke method. Okay, and notice how it's wants a sender, and who's sending this, who's broadcasting this is basically what it wants to know, which is we can just send it this, hey, this dialog fragment is sending this broadcast. Okay, and then finally it wants sign up args, and then we can simply do this by creating some new on sign up event args, and then our constructor that we created wants a first name, email, and password, just like we wanted to do. Okay, and then that is going to be, you guessed it, the user input that the user inputted. So first name dot text, okay, and email dot text. All right, and finally password dot text. And that looks well. So that's what it's doing. It's basically broadcasting to any subscribers that we will soon subscribe to. And shorthand, C# allows you just to do shorthand. Basically, that's also fine. You don't even have to call invoke. It'll know what you're talking about. But I like to use invoke simply for the fact that sometimes when you come back to old code that you're looking at, it almost looks like a method call, which it's not. You know what I mean? It looks like you're calling a method, like, hey, is this a method or is this an event? And if you're deep inside code, it's sometimes hard to tell. You know, you can obviously look over it and be able to tell pretty quickly, but when you see invoke, you know right away, oh, it's an event and it's invoking it. So I like to use invoke, but either way will work perfectly fine. All right, and once we do that, we simply want to dismiss the dialog, and this will make the dialog slide out to the right and go away. All right, and that's all we need to do there. All right, so now we want to subscribe to this event. Basically, when this event's fired, we will know that the user has pushed this button because this is the only place that it can fire from. And we know that the user pushed this button, and in the activity, the main activity, which calls the dialog, we can say, okay, this is going to be called. And you know, there's other ways to do this. You don't have to use events, but it's really clean, because otherwise you'll have to use something like, you'll have to pass in, you know, if you want to do a method over here and you're going to want to do the same thing, you're going to want to make a method in your main activity class. And then over here, your method, your dialog signup fragment class is going to want to call that method. So you'll have to pass in the main activity object and then call it. And then that just gets ugly. You know, it's just, you know, there's other ways to do it, of course, but that's one way to do it. And it's just an ugly way to do it. This is really clean, really nice way to do it. And this is only one great thing about events. And sometimes events are just really save your life, you know, and they have for me many times. So let's go ahead and subscribe to this event that I just keep talking about. Subscribing, what does that mean? What does it mean? So subscribing is just basically the same thing as a click method. You know, right here, this is an event that we subscribe to, and that's all it is. Okay, so down here we want to do sign up dialog, and then here's our event that we just made. Okay, and we can tell by the little electric icon right here. Okay, so that's the event that we just created, and then we'll do plus equals, just like we do with any other events. And here's the event that will fire that once the user clicks on the button, because when the user clicks on the button, the sign up will broadcast and say, hey, I'm broadcasting, and here are the arguments that I'm sending to anyone that's subscribed to me. And this one says, hey, I'm subscribed to you. Oh, okay, when you fired an event, a broadcast, then I better let this method know, because this method wants to execute once it's done, once it's been fired, okay? And notice that event or on sign up event args is passed in. So e dot, and look at that. We have our first name, password, and email. And that's going to be all the stuff that the user has inputted into the text boxes, okay? So at this point, what we would want to do is send a request to the server and say, hey, server, do some PHP code or ASP code or anything like that, ASP.NET, some C# code, and just, send a response back and let me know if everything's okay. We're just going to simulate that for right now. So what we're going to do is basically, make a thread, because usually you would do a web request or something like that. And if you guys want to see that, and if you guys, throw some comments below and let me know, I'll gladly put a video up that shows you how to do that. But for right now, all you need to do is we need to simulate a thread. Okay? And we'll make a dummy method and say what this thread will do, we'll do void act like a request. All right. And all this does is sleep for 3 seconds, and then it'll just return. Okay. So let's copy that and put it into the constructor of the thread. Okay. So that thread, this method basically executes on a different thread, which is what a web request would more likely do asynchronously. So basically they're just acting like a web request. So now that a few seconds have gone by, maybe 3 seconds, might take 4, might take 5, but we put 3, then what's going to happen afterwards? Okay, so then you'll say something like, then you're going to want to take them, if everything's good, what you'll do is you'll check the response of it, of course, and then send them to the next activity. Okay, and really what you would want to do is start that thread, is you would have some parameters in here, and you would send it the parameters of your user. So you would put user password equals, and then all you need to do is just do password. So now you have the user password and the user's first name and email, and you send that data to the server and do your work on the server and bring it back and say, okay, everything's great. Okay, so just making sure that you guys understand that that's what's going on. But here we're just acting like it's basically doing some work. And also one thing that we need to do is, if you haven't done it already, is on here the progress bar is showing always. So we want to change the visibility to invisible. Okay? And that way it's not showing right away, because that wouldn't make any sense, right? And let's grab a reference to the progress bar. Oops. Make sure we keep our convention. And we'll get the reference to the progress bar using the find view by ID method. All right. So now that we have that progress bar, we can set it to, once it's done over here, okay, it will come over here, do work, and we want to do something called run on UI thread. So this is running on a different thread than the main thread, which is commonly referred to as a UI thread. And if we try to implement any kind of user interface objects on another thread, it's going to give us a huge error. So we want to do run on UI thread. Okay. And then in that, what we can do is just throw a quick anonymous method that basically will take the progress bar and set its visibility, which use something called progress bar dot visibility, I believe. Yeah, it's a property that takes view states. Okay, and we want to set it to invisible right here, because this means that, okay, it's been 3 seconds and stop showing the progress bar, right? Which over here is when the user closes the menu and we want to start showing the progress bar. All right. So here we don't have to do the run on UI thread since this is still inside the UI thread. So then we would do the same way, view states dots visible. So this is going to make it visible, call our act like a request method, wait 3 seconds, and then make it invisible. And then after that, you would want to do something like take the user to another activity and like your main activity and show all that stuff. So that's what we're going to probably want to do in the next tutorial, is sending the user to another activity and showing them some other data, which is not too bad. It's just calling an intent, and it's basically the same that you do in Android with Java. But that's just a little heads up on what we might be doing in the next tutorial. Let's go ahead and run this and make sure that everything's working the way that we expect it to. All right. All right, so we have our login system. And here's the point when the user will type in their first name, their email, their password. We're not checking to make sure that, nothing's blank or anything, but we can easily do that. But just for simplicity, this is basically just taking in user input, sign up. Cool. Shows the progress bar, waits 3 seconds, so the web request is done, closes or makes the progress bar invisible, and then the next step would be to take you to the next activity if everything is good and the response is good from the server. So let's do it one more time. Takes in some user input, blah, closes it, waits 3 seconds, does its work, and disappears. Cool. Okay, so everything is working the way we expect it to. And in the next tutorial, what we'll go ahead and look at is going to another activity and probably move on to something a little different than what we've been doing here. This is probably getting a little tedious by now for you guys, but I hope you really enjoyed using the events and everything, and hopefully you can see why, and I've explained well enough to see why events are so important and how they can be so helpful, because they really can be very helpful in many times, and this is only one case where that shows. All right, so once again, as always, thank you for watching.